In this video, let's start talking about using Ansible Vault to encrypt things that we want to keep confidential. So in this case, let's talk about encrypting our providers. So the high-level issue is we don't really want to just store passwords or other secure information inside YAML files. We just don't really want those things to be unencrypted on our file system. Now, one possible solution to this issue is you might have a external inventory system, some sort of a database, and you use Ansible's dynamic inventory feature to query that external database. Basically, you construct a Python script. That Python script outputs information in a certain way that then is made available to Ansible. So this is called dynamic inventory. We're not going to cover that in more detail than what I just specified there. Now, another possible solution to this problem is we use Ansible Vault to encrypt sensitive information in our file system. So we still have the YAML files, they're just encrypted, and then we have various ways where we can provide the password when we execute our playbook. And let's look at an example of doing this. So here I have a playbook. I have group vars. Now my group vars is structured a little bit differently in that I have 4 groups. Inside the groups, I have my providers stored in these providers.yaml file. If I look at my high-level playbook, you can see that all I'm basically doing is just going through each one of the groups and then using the Ansible core modules to connect to at least the Arista, NXOS, and Cisco devices. So let's go ahead and execute that, make sure it works properly. Now at this point, all those provider files are unencrypted. So let's go ahead and start using Ansible Vault to start encrypting these files. So first of all, let's let this playbook complete. It's just working on the NXOS devices at this point. Still waiting for that to complete. Alright, so there it completed. Our connectivity is fully working. Now if I go into my group vars and let's say I go into the Arista group, I look at my providers, you see we just have a YAML file, has certain information in it. Now ideally what you would do is you'd probably have information you didn't care about. You would leave that unencrypted, and then you would have information that was sensitive and you would encrypt that sensitive information. You could separate these into separate YAML files, and pick the things that you needed to be encrypted into these encrypted YAML files. Now, how do we use Vault to encrypt this file? It's very simple. We just say Ansible Vault encrypt. We specify the name of the YAML file that we're going to encrypt, and then it's going to prompt us for a password. Now this password needs to be the same for all the files that you encrypt in Vault. And here I'm just using test123. We look at the end of this, and now we have an encrypted file. You can see it's using AES-256 for its encryption. We no longer have an unencrypted file for providers.yml. We go back to our playbook, we try to execute it. You're now going to see that it is unable to execute our playbook. It is unable to execute it because it has an encrypted file. And now note, Ansible is going to try to unencrypt everything in your inventory. So even if we weren't doing something with the Arista group, it would still complain to us about the fact that this Arista providers .yaml is encrypted and still would let us not execute our playbook. How do we execute our playbook? We could just do ask vault pass. It's going to prompt us for our vault password when we execute it. We provide it. I must have typoed it. We provide it with that where it prompts us, and then it's able to dynamically decrypt that file on the fly, use it while it's running. It's still encrypted on the file system. So it's decrypted it dynamically. It's still encrypted on the file system. Okay, while that's running, go ahead and log in with another window. Get into that directory. Now, what if we need to edit this file? So, what if we wanted to change something in this? So we could just do Ansible Vault edit, the name of the file, specify the vault password. It's not going to let us edit it unless we know the vault password, and then it's going to open it up in your editor. I think it's going to use the default editor for the system, so in this case it's using VI. But now we're in the file. We can make edits to it. When we're done making changes, we're going to still have our encrypted file. You could also decrypt the file. And then at the end of this, I typoed the vault password. Then at the end of this, you're going to have a decrypted file, which you could just directly edit. You can also use the Ansible Vault create option. So say I wanted to create a whatever.yml. This would give us the new password, which we would have to type twice, and then we're actually creating some new file. So we could say var1, var2, with whatever its corresponding value is. And at the end of that, whatever.yml would be encrypted. Now let's go ahead and re-encrypt this providers.yml. Once again, the process for encrypting that is to use Ansible Vault, encrypt, the name of the file. If you wanted to, you could do something like encrypt all my YAML files, in which case it's just that one. Specify the vault password. At the end of this, we have our encrypted file. Now, what if you wanted to automate the execution of this playbook? So, for example, what if you wanted to run this from cron or from some other system in some way where you couldn't manually interact with it and provide it your vault password? So the problem right now is we have to do this ask vault pass, and it's prompting us for the password. Another way you could do this is not through the ask vault pass, but you can provide it a file that has it encrypted. And let me get an example of that. So like this. Let's look at that. So that started executing. But you see here I'm passing it this ---- vault password file, and then I point it to a password file. And then if we look, you can see that that file contains our vault encryption, our vault key. Now you could ask, well, what's the point of that? So one thing you could do here is you could have a Git process where you're checking your encrypted files into Git and storing them up there, but you're not storing your vault password. It also might let you put your vault password in a more obscure location with a more obscure name. Now, this isn't going to, alleviate the risk. Obviously, if someone could get that password, they would be able to decrypt all your sensitive information. But it does provide a little bit of advantage of, one, storing things, particularly in Git or in other systems for storing revision history. And then it does give you some measure of, you could slightly obscure it to make it a little bit harder for people to find confidential information. So this gives you how to use Vault, to encrypt files, decrypt files, edit files, create new encrypted files, and then it gives you a way for storing your Vault password and providing that as an argument using this Vault password file, or potentially if you just want to provide it on the command line with this ask Vault pass.